So they're shooting to control the population that's along the Marag corridor. And as they're doing that, they're shooting into this crowd, and Palestinians, civilians, human beings are dropping to the ground, getting shot. And Amir was one of them. Amir walked 12 kilometers to get food, got nothing but scraps, thanked us for it, and died.
The GHF, or what's called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, is being exposed big time, with more whistleblowers now coming out, especially after Anthony Aguilar, who's a retired lieutenant colonel, previous special forces in the United States Army, who served in Gaza, and came up with shocking statements blaming the United States of being an outright participant in the genocide inside of the Gaza Strip. This was an image circulating online of a child who Anthony helped in Gaza that was later killed by IDF terrorists. In this video, I'm going to give you all of the statements that are coming from Anthony in relation to the situation in Gaza and what this organization did. He had a couple of interviews that I wanted to share with you. This was one of them here on Democracy Now! Let's listen to what he had to say.
Anthony, thanks so much for joining us on Democracy Now! Can you start off by talking about your experience in Gaza and telling us exactly what you saw?
Thank you. It's an honor to be here and to share this story. I do not call this my story. I call this the story of the oppressed, the story of the Palestinians in Gaza who are dying at the hands of starvation and violence. What I witnessed in Gaza, I can only describe as a dystopian, post-apocalyptic wasteland. We, the United States, are complicit. We are involved, hand in hand, in the atrocities and the genocide that is currently undergoing in Gaza. For anyone who says that there is no starvation or mass hunger, or that not only are we at the precipice, but we have stepped over the line of wide-scale famine, to anyone who says that that's not happening, shame on you. Shame on you. It's inhumane. What I witnessed in Gaza at all 4 distribution sites. I didn't just go to one for a photo op. I didn't go to one to watch a distribution and then say, yes, this looks great. I spent days on end in Gaza at all 4 distribution sites, at Karim Shalom, where the aid is loaded for distribution, and at both operation centers that control the daily convoys, logistics, operations, and distribution for the 4 sites. What I saw on the sites, around the sites, to and from the sites, can be described as nothing but war crimes. Crimes against humanity. Violations of international law. This is not hyperbole. This is not platitudes or drama. This is the truth. I break that down by what I would describe as the sites themselves. I spoke to Senator Van Hollen last week, and we had a very frank discussion on the status of the sites and what's at these sites. The sites have not only become death traps, they were designed as death traps. All 4 distribution locations were intentionally, deliberately constructed, planned, and built in the middle of an active combat zone. Some may argue, well, all of Gaza is a war zone. That may be true, but there are parts of Gaza that are direct or that are determined to be active operational combat zones where Israeli Defense Forces are operating. Those sites were built in the middle of those areas intentionally. It's not by accident. That in and of itself, to designate humanitarian distribution sites to service an unarmed, starving population, to build them deliberately in an active combat zone, is a violation of the Geneva Convention protocols. It's a violation of humanitarian law. And in my opinion, it's a violation of humanity in general. The sites, not only where they were built, all 4 sites around the perimeter and the roads leading in and out are barricaded by razor wire. Not barbed wire, not concertina wire that we use in warfare for obstacle obstruction or for paths. Razor wire. Geneva Conventions specifically prohibit the use of razor wire to restrict areas that civilians are servicing: hospitals, water points, few distribution points, and we're using it. Not only did the IDF provide it for us to use it on the sites, we, UG Solutions, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, asked for it specifically. Razor wire is designed to maim and kill, and we're using that to channelize and herd, if you will, thousands of unarmed, starving civilians. That's a war crime. The actions on the sites, escalation of force, no standard operating procedures to dictate that, no rules of engagement provided to the armed contractors on the ground. The indiscriminate use of force, lethal and non-lethal, against unarmed civilians. I want to make that clear. We aren't there on the distribution sites defending ourselves against Hamas. We are using indiscriminate force, targeting civilians, escalation of force that goes far beyond the measures of appropriate against an unarmed, starving population. The equipment that we were issued, fully automatic weapons, which in and of itself is not a violation of protocol. However, we were issued M855 green-tipped ammunition. That's important because green-tipped ammunition is a steel-jacketed copper round that's specifically designed to penetrate armor. It's designed to kill. It's designed to shoot through reinforced objects to kill someone on the other side of it. That's what all the UG Solutions contractors are equipped with right now in country. Everyone carries a standard basic load of 210 rounds of M855 armor-piercing military combat ammunition. Why would anyone need that? Even if to defend themselves defend their lives against an unarmed population. It's inappropriate. That in and of itself, that action there is a war crime. I'd call the status of us being in the country. Every UG Solutions contract American, US citizens in Israel that are armed with fully automatic weapons in Gaza as we speak today, right now, and have been since the 26th of May. We are in the country on a B2 entry visa as tourists. We're in the country as tourists. So if a family member wanted to go to Israel to visit Jerusalem, they would enter Israel on a tourist visa. That's the legal status that armed American citizens are in Gaza right now with the authority to use hostile force against an unarmed civilian on a tourist visa. That is a violation of humanitarian international law, period. The things that I just described are not just opinions, they're facts. The sites were designed to lure, bait, aid, and kill. The food that we distribute, nowhere near enough. To Mr. Johnny Moore, shame on you for celebrating 92 million meals delivered into Gaza. Shame on you. It's a very simple equation. 92 divided by 2.2 million people, divided by 3 million or 3 meals a day. That's what GHF proclaims. We've been distributing aid since the 26th of May. 26th May to now the 29th of June. 64 days of continuous distribution. And we've only managed to distribute 92 million meals. When you break that down, again, it's a simple equation. That's 14 days of meals. So out of 64 days, we've provided 14 days of meals to the entire population in the enclave of Gaza. That's inhumane. That would be like saying that you only eat every fourth day. You only eat on Thursday and you only eat on Monday. And to say that that's humanitarian? So to anyone that says that that's enough or not even close to enough, the narrative of GHF needs help to do the rest, you don't need help because you're not anywhere close to where we need to be. The fact is the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is not trained, equipped, manned, or staffed to run humanitarian aid and humanitarian assistance of this magnitude. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation needs to be defunded, shut down, and the United Nations needs to be allowed back in full scale, supported by the United States, resourced, helped. Instead of giving the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation $60 million, use that $60 million to support the United Nations mechanism to get 400 sites back to operating, to feed 2.1 million people every day. That was the capacity of the United Nations. So what I saw in Gaza, to me, concerns me as an American. what we are doing in Gaza, in being complicit with what the Israeli Defense Forces are doing, is un-American. I didn't come forward to talk because I want to disregard the struggle and the fight. I stand with Israel against Hamas in their atrocities. The world stands with Israel against Hamas in their atrocities. No one would argue that October 7th wasn't atrocious. But if we as a nation, the United States, and Israel, one of our closest allies, if we go down the road of saying we're doing what Hamas did and saying that that's okay, we are losing our humanity. And we cannot go down that road. It's un-American. It's not in line with our values.
So that was the first statement coming from him. Clearly a man on Israel's side. He's criticizing Hamas. He says that he is with Israel. And despite that, despite the fact that he is pro-Israel blatantly, he is heavily criticizing what's happening in relation to the GHF. And that wasn't the only statement that he had. He had several other statements where he described the circumstances and exactly what he was ordered to do and who he was working for. For example, this interview that he had
I was
here.
told very explicitly, directly to my face, that our client is the IDF.
Your client is the IDF.
Our client is the IDF. And this came out in a discussion once where I was in the control room. I was on I was on control room duty that day. We had shifted responsibilities on a rotational base. So I was in there that day with the radio observing site number 2 distribution. A Palestinian man had picked up some children to let them step on his shoulders to get onto a berm because they were being crushed in the crowd. Site 2 is very small, smallest of all 4 sites. And these children are being crushed, and you pick them up there and put them up on the berm. And the Israeli Defense Forces liaison officer in the main control center with us comes up to the screen that I'm watching, and he says, "Tell your men to get them down." I was like, "We got this under control." I was like, "I know they know what they're doing. No, they're children. Let's calm down.
Mm-hmm.
Get them down now, or I will." Well, there's no IDF on the site, so I didn't take it as much more than just being, bombastic and like, okay, like, hey, we got this. He leaves and goes to his desk in the operations center, and he gets on the radio and he speaks something on the radio. It was in Hebrew. I don't speak Hebrew. One of the contractors that was there was American that did speak Hebrew, and he notifies me. He said, "Hey, he just told the snipers at the IDF position, because the site number 2 is co-located with an Israeli base."
Mm-hmm.
He said, "He just told the snipers to take these kids out." I was like, "On the radio?" He's like, "Yeah." This lieutenant colonel then comes back up and he says, "Get them down." And I look at him and I say, "Did you just call on the radio and tell your men to shoot them?" And he said, "I'm going to take care of this if you don't." I said, "You are not going to shoot. You are not going to shoot children. You're also not going to shoot, because if your men miss, you're going to hit others. You're not going to shoot." Thank God we didn't come to the conclusion of figuring out whether he would or not, because the children jumped down and ran off of the site. They didn't want to be there. They were unarmed. They didn't have shoes. One wasn't even wearing a shirt. They were starving. The chief operations officer for Safe Reach Solutions, our higher headquarters, so to speak, in the contract, beckoned me outside with him, and he looked at me in the face and he said, "Never say no to the client." And I asked him, I was like, "I didn't know the client was in there. Who's here? Did Johnny Moore come to visit?"
Right.
And he said, "No, the IDF." I was like, "The IDF are our client?" He said, "Yes, we work for them." A light bulb went off in my head.
That was the second one. And the final one is the example of what he has done with one of the children who he was helping inside of the Gaza Strip, and what exactly happened to him. Listen to this video over here.
We treat the civilians in Gaza worse than we treated ISIS, if that's any indication to the level of inhumanity. This young boy, this is on May 28th on secure distribution site number 2. The aid had been distributed. A lot of people had left. You see behind, there's a crowd of people still with their boxes, kind of getting ready to leave. And this little boy, his name is Amir, and he was standing, he was with the crowd, but he walks over, and you see that first picture on the top right. He kind of walks over to me, and he puts out his hand. And at first I thought like that he wanted more food or something, and I felt bad because I didn't have anything. But I was like, oh, I have nothing. And he puts out his hand, and so I beckoned him to come to me. I said, come here. And he reaches out and he holds my hand and he kisses my hand. He kisses my hand and he says, Shukran. You can see in this picture that this little boy is not wearing shoes. His clothes are falling off of him because he's so skinny. I put my hand on his left shoulder and I looked at him and he's looking at me. We're looking at each other in the eyes. And I say to him, people care. You're a human being and people care about you. The world cares. That's not Hamas. That's not a Hamas fighter. And I looked at him and I said, the world cares. And he put down the little food he has. You notice he doesn't have a box. He doesn't have a box of food. He has half of a bag of rice that he found on the ground, a broken bag, half a bag of lentils that he found on the ground. And he was thanking us. Thank you. This little boy from where he came from walked 12 kilometers to get there, just to get there. 12 kilometers. Look at this boy. And when he got there, he thanked us for the remnants and the small crumbs that he got. And he sets them down on the ground because I was kneeling at this point, and he sets his food down and he places his hands on my face, on the side of my face, on my cheeks, these frail, skeleton, emaciated hands, dirty. And he puts them on my face and he kissed me. He kissed me and he said, thank you, in English. Thank you. And he collected his items and he walked back to the group. And then he was shot at with pepper spray and tear gas and stun grenades and bullets shot at his feet and in the air. And he runs away scared. I was on the inside of the site. So there's berms that surround the site. So I couldn't see outside of the site. So the last group of people, women and children and small children and kids and children and babies, are leaving the site. And as they're leaving the site and they get to the next intersection, I hear machine gun fire. It startled me because I didn't know what was going on. So I ran up to the berm. You see the berm behind him there. I ran up to the berm so I could look. And I run up to the berm and I get down and I'm kind of like in a covered position and I'm looking like, oh, what's going on? I thought we were being attacked. And the IDF were shooting at the crowd. And I want to point this out. When they left the site, the road to leave the site is covered on both sides by a berm. The IDF can't see that. All the IDF get to see from where their position is that as these civilians come out and they hit that main corridor, if they're shooting warning shots to control the population from going east, they can't see on the other side of that berm. And they don't even know that. They don't know that they can't see that because they don't have control of the sites. They have to stay away from the sites. So they're shooting to control the population that's along the Marab corridor. And as they're doing that, they're shooting into this crowd. And Palestinians, civilians, human beings are dropping to the ground, getting shot. And Amir was one of them. Amir walked 12 kilometers to get food, got nothing but scraps, thanked us for it, and died.
So that was the evidence that's coming straight up from a person who participated in the GHF. I'm not sure how accurate his statement is about the IDF not seeing. That's something I'm not entirely sure of. And at the end of the day, the man said that he is supporting Israel, But regardless of that, all of the statements are directly proving how complicit the United States is. And this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or the Genocide Humanitarian Foundation, nothing but an experiment against the population that is intended there to keep the population starving. They're hardly giving them anything. Their client is clearly the IDF, so they're not there to provide this humanitarian mission. And it's not providing an answer to the crisis inside of the Gaza Strip. More and more people from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation are coming out now. It's proving that this organization was intended to serve Israel rather than serve anything else. And not everyone is like this man. So imagine about the other cases that some of these people did not speak about. Well, we heard about them. We heard about them from the Palestinian side. Red light, yellow light, green light, like the Gaza Squid Game, times 1 million in its barbarity, killing people left, right, and center, shooting at crowds indiscriminately, killing all of them. Every day, dozens of people get killed just to go to seek aid after walking for kilometers. Some of them die on the way, some of them die on the way back because they're already thirsty, they're hungry, they're not facing anything. That is the reality. The United States is directly participating, and that has to change. This barbarism needs to stop. And all of the recent moves with the airdropped aid and a couple of trucks going in from Egypt towards Karm Abu Salam, that's nothing. These are just ways for the governments to cover up the crimes of Israel and to lower the pressure that's coming from the population. The governments are hiding the reality from us and are trying to put makeup on the starvation campaign, the forced starvation campaign against the civilian population of Gaza.